I'm Joel Blackford with Beth Hassett Sabbath Fellowship. We are not meeting in the old building. Call first, 612-315-6778. We're virtual. We do the philosophy of eschatology, what you need to know about the end times, your knowledge, your reality, our existence. We try not to be disparate. We're Beth Hassett Sabbath Fellowship. Before I get into the actual presentation, I want to mention that tonight is going to be interesting because our electromagnetosphere has been thinning quite a bit over the last, since 1880, say, 120, 100, quite a bit more than that, actually, because we're probably 140 years out of it really thinning fast. And I normally subscribe to Ben Davidson at Space Weather News, but, there's some new names out here, so I'll just mention that Tamitha Scove is talking about this. She's a PhD and she's rather smart. She's talking about this incredible forecast due. Basically, on the 10th, 11th, we had a coronal mass ejection from the sun, and it's going to hit our weakened electromagnetosphere, and it should cause more aurora than typical. So just watch for it Sunday night. So this is being recorded Sunday night, 3/13/22, but it's 7, 8 o'clock right now, which is not the time that we should be hit by this. And it could be later. It could be in the morning of 3/14, but it's very interesting. So big CME direct hit. It's directly sent up from the sun towards us. And so you should see the auroras first, and then you should see some earthquakes happening next week. So just be aware of it and realize that that's what's happening, and that we're getting very close to the full moon of Adar 2. And then we'll jump into Passover after that, which is Nisan, which really is Aviv, if you want to correctly state it. So, this is Earth Sky. This is Ben Davidson talking about it. So if you want to go to Ben Davidson, the Suspicious Observers on YouTube, you can see the video and he'll talk about it. The main thing is be aware of it, notice it, and then look for the Aurora Borealis. I'm in northern Minnesota, so I'll probably see something. Okay, so what are we really talking about tonight? DNA tests. I want to talk about it because there's a very interesting article, and when I shot it out into the Facebook land, of course, people just hated my idea because I'm citing a rabbi. But he's spot on, guys, and I want you to be aware that the DNA tests are coming. They're already here, and that the Son of David will be marked potentially by the DNA test. So there's a reason for this. I'm going to give you a good reason and a bad reason. So let's go through it. And this is not the total story on this. This is just one of my quick hits on what's going on. So we've been looking at DNA for a number of years now because we have problems with these poachers across Africa stealing the tusks from elephants and other things like that, because I think it's an aphrodisiac. Either way, they want to stop them. So they're doing DNA testing to figure out who these people are. And as a result, they're catching some criminals. And they've been using DNA on criminals for years. And then here's an interesting article on the right-hand side. Single DNA test for over 50 genetic diseases will cut diagnosis from decades to days. Okay, so they're going to tell you this is good. So, we want a gene library of every person, and we want to know, well, there's nefarious reasons for this too. So keep in mind, yes, it's good to stop criminals or stop diseases, but it's also going to be used by the Antichrist. And in an odd way, we'll just talk about it during this video. Okay, so let's first cite Alona Nava. I love the guy. Now, I am a Messianic Jew, and he is a Messianic Jew, but he doesn't believe in Yeshua. But he is as spiritual and charismatic as you could find on any of the Christian charismatics. Okay, he just works within the Orthodox Jewish community. I would consider him more of a Lubavitcher, but he's Orthodox, and there are like certain rules that all the Orthodox agree to. So he's part of that, but yet he's very charismatic. So he's done an article with David Sidman back on March 3rd of 2022. COVID tests are checked by Vatican to determine who Messiah will be, Rabbi says. Oh, did people hate that when I mentioned this in Facebook land? And so he's citing, a star rises from Yaakov, and that is basically saying that the Messiah will come from Jacob, and the scepter comes forth from Israel, which is Jacob again, and it smashes the brow of Moab and the foundation of all children of Het. So it's just interesting to see this. So what I'm going to do is read a little bit from this article, and then we'll jump into my analysis after that. According to one famous rabbi, there is far more sinister agenda behind the tests. In a recent lecture, Kabbalist, and he is a Kabbalist, Rabbi Alona Nava, which kabul means received. Okay, it's like receiving the Sabbath. So anyway, asserted that the Vatican is examining all nasal swab tests for COVID-19 to determine whose DNA the test accumulated matches of the tests would match King David's. So there's a way to figure out King David, and I'll give you a couple of different angles on that. According to Rabbi Anava, who's at one of the point of his life pronounced clinically dead. Yes, he was technically dead at one point in time. He was a drug addict. He was a bad boy, and he was dead for a period of time. Then he came back to life. I tend to listen to the people that have had after death experiences, and he's one of them, but he's a good one, and he's very faithful now. The other one that I like is Natan, the little 15-year-old from 2015 that died and came back and argued with the rabbis, and he was very correct, better than the rabbis. So he's in Jerusalem right now. So he's saying that the Vatican has excavated underneath King David's tomb on Mount Zion to collect his DNA. Very interesting. He added that the Vatican knows that the Messiah will come from the lineage of King David, and so they are trying to see who is alive today, that it is a match with the biblical king. He added that they're doing this to presumptively or preemptively kill the Messiah or Messianic candidates. Now, he's arguing that because he's going to argue that the Messiah is a human being that just kind of steps out from the crowd. That isn't going to be the case, but it's still very interesting because there will be a person stepping out from the crowd, from the peoples, the seas. He comes up from the seas, which is the peoples, and that's the Antichrist. So just be aware of this. This is very Kabbalistic. Yes, it's very bizarre, but it's actually very accurate. So let's go through. So once again, the article and Rabbi Alona Nava, and he talks about all the end times, and he's very accurate, and he's very prescient. So there's a very malicious, evil way. They took over the grave of King David. So basically, saying the Roman Catholics dug up the bones of King David, took DNA samples, and now they're going to shove Q-tips in the eyes and nose of the entire world to get DNA samples from everybody to try to track where's the Mashiach and who's the Mashiach. And because they know the Mashiach comes from the house of David. If they can get the DNA samples from there, or from here, and some DNA samples from there, they can narrow down who the Mashiach is and kill him before he comes to redeem the world. Okay, that's not going to happen, I understand. That is a rabbinic thought, but still, it's really accurate with the other information that I'll give you. So another rabbi, a spiritual leader of the Yanar Institute in Jerusalem, Rabbi Daniel Asar, believes otherwise. According to Hazar, the tunnel is a means for the Vatican to exhume the bones of King David, who they allege was buried on Mount Zion, and the church is Catholic, and the rabbi asserts that they will operate under the guise of the Vatican. So they really want to rule based on his bones. Catholic churches are built over cemeteries in many cases. So it's, you'll go underneath there and you'll see the bones. They'll claim of the martyrs, but I always wonder why. I don't know. I'll say that life is in the blood, and the etzem in the Hebrew is the bone, which produces the life which is in the blood. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so we do the philosophy of the end of times. We're doing the DNA test today. We're talking about this in an odd way, and I hope you'll enjoy this. This is a different way of looking at it. So first of all, you have to assess the promises that God said. And he did say in Matthew 28:20 that even until the end of the age, I'm going to remember this. I will be with you, okay? So the main thing is, when you look for the genetic line, you have to go back to Abraham or Abram in Genesis 12, and then Isaac, and then in Genesis 28, and then Jacob and his descendants, and the promises, the covenants are made not only with the people, but also with the land, and the land belongs to God. So there are multiple types of promises made, and God doesn't lie, and he doesn't break his promises. So just keep that in mind. This is by a gentleman named Moran, which is from Hope for Israel. It's good. I mean, he's citing the sources that basically say these are the covenants. God keeps his covenants, he keeps his promises, and it's going to be a lineage issue. Okay, so now let's cite a couple of verses. So let's go through. Nevertheless, my grace will not leave him, as I took it away from Shaul, King Saul, whom I removed before you. Thus your house and your kingdom will be made secure forever before you. Your throne will be set up forever. Natan, prophet, Nathan, told King David in all the words and described all this entire vision from 2 Samuel 7:15 through 17. So bottom line is, this is from the Jewish Virtual Library. They're saying King Solomon was known for his wisdom and his wealth and his writings. He became ruler in 967, I say about 970, 967, right in that range, which would be 1,000 years before Yeshua exactly. So basically, if you look at Yeshua dying on the cross at 30 Common Era, and you go back exactly 1,000 years to 970, you've got David dying. Okay, it's just almost exactly on the mark, 1,000 years. Okay, so his kingdom was large, and he was the king of peace, shalom. So basically, he was the son of the king of David. There's no doubt about it, and that this will be part of the lineage, and that God promised this lineage forever, throne forever, lineage forever. And then another evidence of this is Isaiah 11. So this is a messianic Isaiah passage. It's very interesting. All sorts of animals getting along together that shouldn't get along together, and a little baby leading them. The shoot will come up from the stump of Jesse. Jesse was David's dad, Yishai. So the branch will emerge from the trunk of Yishai, Jesse. The shoot will grow from his roots, from his seed. Okay, the Spirit of Adonai will rest upon him. So these are the 7 spirits of God. They're also found in Revelation, but they're here: the Spirit of God, then the Spirit of wisdom, the Spirit of understanding, the Spirit of counsel, the Spirit of knowledge, the fear of God, inspired by the fear of God. So these are the 7 spirits of the Messiah. He will walk in the fullness of the Spirit, and he will judge properly, justly. He will decide fairly. He will smell them rather than, he won't look at them. He will not judge them by what he hears. He will smell people, basically, and determine. He will just sense if they're doing the right things or the wrong things. And so on that day, verse 10 from Isaiah 11, the root of Yishai, of Jesse, stands as a banner for the peoples. The Goyim, the Gentiles, will seek him out, and the place where he rests will be glorious. So we see the lineage pass through. One more, just so you see it. This is Jeremiah 23. I will appoint shepherds over them, and they will shepherd them, when they will no longer be afraid or disgraced, and no one will be missing, says Adonai. The days are coming, says Adonai, when I will raise a righteous branch of David. So that's Samach in the Hebrew, and that is literally the seed of David. And he will reign as king and succeed, and he will do what is just and right in the land, and Yehuda will be saved. Israel will live in safety, and the name of him will be Adonai Zidkenu, Adonai our righteousness, Tzedakah. Okay, so that's Jeremiah 23. So it all matches right now. The seed passes through, the promises pass through, and what Rabbi Alona Nava is saying, the Catholic Church is very interested in this, in creating a DNA repository, because they want to know who's who. They want to play a part in this. Now, according to 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 sources, the Pope, this present Pope, is a bizarre one. Now, I love Roman Catholics. I'm not a big fan of this Pope and some of the bad priests, okay? But Roman Catholics are fine, okay? So according to Sadhu Sundar Severage, and some people have a problem with him too, it's confirmed Pope Francis is the false prophet of Revelation. So the false prophet is going to want to transfer the power from himself to the Antichrist. And if you want to see that in a weird way, it's very difficult to read it through, but Daniel chapter 8 talks about the 2 animals colliding, the shaggy goat and the ram. And basically, the ram is the Pope and the shaggy goat is the Antichrist. And their systems kind of conflict with each other, because the Pope wants to be the leader, but he realizes, no, it has to go on to the Antichrist. And so you'll see that conflict at some point in time, when it really isn't worship of what the Pope wants it to be. It's going to be worship, in some cases, of aliens in some ways, and it'll be the Antichrist involved in this, in the transfer of power. The other person is Tom Horn, and my old friend that died on me, Chris Putnam, who wrote the book Petrus Romanus, The Final Pope is Here, and they basically predicted that in 2012 the Pope would retire, Benedict XVI, and that Peter the Roman would take over, and that is Pope Francis. And they announced it privately in 2012, in the same time frame that Chris announced it, and then he officially switched power then in 2013, in like March, April. So it was very interesting. And 2012 was one of those sea change years anyway. Okay, so now here's my other source that's very interesting. So this is Rebecca Sterling. Now keep in mind that she has a certain disease, and I'm blanking on it right now, MS. So she had an accurate vision in 1999 of Barack Obama and his family. And she's got this diorama and all these characters and everything like that based on 1999. So she knew about Barack and his tall wife and his tall daughters and everything like that. And she called him the mixed race man. She knew about Pope Francis, and she knew who the Antichrist was. She saw him. And so she has these little characters there. And she has a weird scene coming up here where the transfer of power occurs between the Pope in the middle of the scene on the upper right there, and then the Antichrist is there, and a bunch of aliens are there. And the aliens are part of this process of transferring power. And the reason why they choose this particular man is that he is a descendant of David. And they're able to use the Shroud of Turin, and they're able to use the bones of David and do DNA tests and prove that this man is a descendant of David via two sources. And she uses the term extra dimensionals. And by the way, some of the things that she talks about, hell on earth, avalanches, blizzards, cyclones, droughts, earthquakes. That's why I wanted to bring up that little article at first about the CME hitting the earth tonight on March 13th, because it's going to get worse. You're going to have more lightning storms. You're going to have more earthquakes. We're going to have more next week, So just be aware of all of this, that Rebecca's, yes, she has MS, so she forgets things now, but she's highly accurate in 1999. In terms of prophetically speaking. Okay, so once again, the Shroud of Turin, and I'm just having fun with the stuff on the left-hand side here. They're saying Jesus is returning on 9/19 of 22. Well, they're always wrong, but it is interesting that the Shroud of Turin is part of the process, and they're going to test the DNA off that. Oh, by the way, September 19th is not really the right day. It would be 23 Elul. That's not going to be the day that he returns. So they're wrong again. But the main thing is being able to cite Yeshua's DNA, David's DNA, through the Shroud of Turin, matching it up with the bones of David is very intriguing. Very, very intriguing. Okay. Now we're going to run into verses. And this is when people run screaming because I read a lot of verses, but we have to go through Daniel 11. And we're really, what I've always cited in the past was Daniel 11, 36 through 45. But there's some new guys that have come out and they've really shown me other information. I don't agree with them on much because they're Muslim Antichrist guys. And I totally disagree with them. The Antichrist has to be an Orthodox Jew. I'm sorry. You can't get close to the Holy of Holies unless you're a Jew. You can't get there if you're a woman or anything other than an Orthodox Jew. So just deal with it, okay? So they're coming up with, from verse 21 forward, so that's Dalton Thomas and Joel Richardson again. From that forward, they're talking about the Antichrist. So let's just read it. Stick with me. Come on. Don't blank out just because I read a lot of verses. But we're going to go through the second half of Daniel 11. In his place will arise one who will send a tax collector through the glorious kingdom. But within a few days he will be broken, though neither in anger nor in battle. Then we switch out now, and they're arguing this is the Antichrist. There will arise in his place a despicable man, not entitled to inherit the majesty of the kingdom, but he will come without warning and gain the kingdom by intrigue. Oh, that matches. Large armies will be broken and swept away before him, as well as the prince of the covenant. Interesting. Alliances will be made with him, but he will undermine them by deceit, betrayal. And that, if you study Dante's Inferno, betrayal is the seventh layer of hell. Then, although he will have but a small following, he will emerge and become strong. Okay, so that's Daniel 11, 20 through 23. Then we move on. Without warning, he will assail the most powerful men in each province and do things his predecessors never did, either recently or in the distant past. He will reward them with plunder, spoil, wealth, while devising plots against their strongholds, but only for a time. He will summon his power and courage against the king of the south. I don't know who that is, guys. But anyway, with a great army, and the king of the south, I'm saying maybe Egypt, maybe Sudan. And Egypt isn't really a powerhouse, but they're an army, and will fight back with a very large and powerful army, but he will not succeed because of plots devised against him. Yes, those who shared his food will destroy him. His army will be swept away, and many will fall in the slaughter. Okay, moving on. The two kings, bent on mischief, will sit at the same table. We have that going on right now, too. We have the Ukrainian king and the Russian king sitting at the same table, speaking lies to each other, but there are lots of kings today speaking lies to each other. There's Klaus Schwab that's speaking lies. There are many liars out there right now. Okay, so because the appointed end will not have come yet. So just keep in mind the lies are happening right now, but we aren't at that appointed end. We aren't really there yet. We're just in the birth pangs. Then the king of the north will return to his own land and great wealth. With his heart set against the holy covenant, he will take action and then return home. At the time designated, he will come back to the south. But this time things will turn out differently than before because the ships from Kittim will come against him so that his courage will fail him. Then in retreat, he will take furious action against the Holy Covenant, against showing favor to those who abandon the Holy Covenant. Interesting. That sounds like an Antichrist. Now, normally in the past, I would never have agreed with this, but I've really spent some time on these verses, and yeah, it looks like that's the case. This is the Antichrist. Armed forces will come at his order and profane the sanctuary and fortress. They will abolish the daily burnt offering and set up the abomination that causes desolation. Those who act wickedly against the covenant, he will corrupt with his blandishments, but the people who know their God will stand firm and prevail. Those among the people who have discernment will cause the rest of the peoples to understand what is happening. Nevertheless, for a while they will fall victim to sword, fire, exile, and pillage. When they stumble, they will receive a little help, although many who join them will be insincere. Sounds like Antichrist again. Okay, so now we're moving forward, and we're getting to the section where I'm positive we're talking about the Antichrist. We're real close. Okay, even some of those with discernment will stumble, so that some of them will be refined, purified, and cleansed, for an end is yet to come at the designated time. That would be the end of days, and then we'll move into the millennium. The king, the Antichrist, will do as he pleases. He will exalt himself and consider himself greater than any god, and he will utter monstrous blasphemies against the God of gods. That sounds like the Antichrist. He will prosper only until the period of wrath is over. That sounds like the end days. For when that has been determined must take place, he, the Antichrist, will show no respect for the gods of his ancestors worshipped or the God women worship. And the weird thing is there, the phrase that's being used there is well, anyway, I'll discuss it in this term. It's ma'uzim in terms of what's in the Bible, and I'm saying that is from the demon gods that are goat demons. Okay, Uzim, Izim, it's real close, people. So there's something about him worshiping demon gods that are goats. Okay, he won't show any respect for any god because he will consider himself greater than all of them. And it gets back to this creature from Leviticus 16, which is Azazel, the demon goat god out in the wilderness. That's what he loves. That's his. So here we go. So I'll show you this in the strongholds, but instead he will honor the god of strongholds. Ma'zim from the shaggy goat demons. That's basically how I would read that. With gold, silver, precious stones, and other costly things, he will honor a god unknown to his ancestors. He will deal with the strongest, Ma'uzim from the shaggy goat demons. That fortress word again, with the help of a foreign god. Is that UFOs? I don't know. It sounds like it. He will confer honor on those he acknowledges, causing them to rule over many and distributing land as a reward. When the time of the end comes, we're getting close to that, the king of the south will push at him, while the king of the north will attack him like a whirlwind. With chariots, cavalry, and a large navy, he will invade countries, overrun them, and move on. Getting close to the end. He will also enter the land of glory, that's Israel, and many countries will come to grief, but these will be saved from his power. Edom, which is a bad place, Moab, close by, and people of Ammon. Jordan. He will reach out his hand to seize other countries too. The land of Egypt will not escape. He will control the treasures of gold and silver, as well as everything else in Egypt of value. Put and Ethiopia will be subject to him. However, news from the east, from Iran, I'm arguing, and north, Turkey, will frighten him, so that he moves out in great fury to ruin and completely do away with many. Finally, when he pitches his tents of his palace between the seas and the mountain of holy glory, he will come to his end, and no one will help him. That's the end of Daniel 11. So what I'm arguing is that he's running around and he's wiping out the sons of Abraham. He's wiping out the sons of Keturah, which is Abraham's later wife, and then he's also going to be wiping out the sons of Sarah and Hagar too, for that matter. So he's going to wipe out those sons of Hagar that seems to be more Egyptian in background, or maybe Sudanese, and then he's going to go after the sons of Isaac last. Okay, so it's all based on the Abrahamic promise. Okay, you're wondering, why, Joel? Why is that the case? Because there's no way for Satan to win without negating God's promise. That's what needs to occur for Satan to win. He's not going to win, you know that. but he's going to fight to the end. Okay, now we're going to close out with a few other weird things just to have some fun with you. And so Klaus Schwab is this evil genius from Germany that wants the World Economic whatever it is, foundation, to run the world. And his little assistant is a guy named Jubilee, Yuval Noah Harari. This guy should be a good guy, but instead he wants to hack your brain, and he wants to use the DNA technology to hack you and figure people out. He wants to create a database on all of us. He wants to hack us, and he constantly is talking about hacking the brain, hacking people, hacking, and he's part of the WEF, and it's just horrific what they're trying to do, and it's disgusting. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Klaus Schwab runs the whole thing. He's as evil as they come, but Yuval is bad too. Now, the other thing to watch is watch the DNA testing, the worldwide DNA testing, and then also watch the Abrahamic Accords. Okay, so what's going on right now in February? Well, everybody, all the people, the Arabians and all the other people around Israel are saying these Abraham Accords are great. We need more of them. We need peace, hope, and prosperity based on the Abraham Accords. So just watch it. There's this phrase from Daniel 9:27 that says Givor, and so watch that increase over time. If you see a big increase in the Abrahamic Accords, it's going to be the time of the 7-year covenant. So just be aware of that. Okay. Will they increase Givor again? Saudi FM praises Abrahamic Accords. So Mohammed bin Salman loves Jared Kushner and loves whatever's occurring here. So even though his father is saying we're not doing any of this stuff and we really want a Palestinian state first, MBS is pushing this hard to get everybody signed up for this. So he's a candidate too. So they're BFFs. Yep. He owes no one bigger than Jared Kushner, Trump's personal envoy to the Crown Prince. Interesting people. So absolute power. MBS will have it shortly, and he will force more of the Abrahamic covenant. He will, and probably Palestinian statehood too. So, and this is interesting how Iran is reminding MBS that Israel is the real enemy, and Iran wants to destroy Saudi Arabia. So, strange bedfellows. You think everybody that is a Muslim agrees on everything? No, there's totally different eschatologies going on, and totally different. They're tribal. And you would think with Eastern Orthodox that they would all get along, but Russia is invading Ukraine, and the White Russians up north there in Belarus are all Eastern Orthodox. They're all fighting against each other because it's tribal. Okay, so where are we right now? We're in the birth pangs. We're moving towards the fourth seal. We might be moving towards tribulation soon. I don't know how long it takes. The Great Tribulation comes after that. DNA testing will prove the Messiah is the son of David. You will see it occur probably in your lifetime. Okay, there's lots of players. Don't always get caught up with the Antichrist. There's the false prophet. He's going to be more involved in your lives sooner than later. Gog is also a player, but then there's also this fifth trumpet, the king angel, and this locust, and cavalry soldiers from Revelation 9, and there's Illuminati and Klaus Schwab and Yuval, that guy, and then also there's just 10 big tech horns, these DNS people across the world that are shutting people down. They shut down Russia the other day here, so that means they can shut us down if they don't like what we happen to say on the internet. There's going to be fallen angels. There's going to be shaggy goat demons. Satan's going to be kicked out too. Natural disasters galore. There are many hypnotized people that are misbehaving. There are pharaohs. So don't think about the Antichrist only. Yes, obviously he's number one, but it's going to take a while to get to number one. There's going to be some good people on the planet. Be one of the good people. And keep in mind, there's some people in between, and you want to talk to them about it. You don't want them to go to hell. So, love the people, and keep in mind, Yom Kippur is probably the date when the determination is carried out. So Yeshua might return on Yom Teruah, which is Rosh Hashanah, but the determination is probably going to be Yom Kippur. Otherwise, it just doesn't match up with the theology of it. Okay, so what are we trying to do? We're trying to have clean clothing. It's a wedding coming up here. Clean clothing means repentance and keeping your garments clean and not being naked too, which is another meaning. If you want to look at something interesting, go back to the garden where Yeshua is being arrested and look for the naked guy. Very interesting. Take care. God bless. Thank you very much for coming to one more session, and hopefully we'll see you next week. God bless. Bye-bye.